Kathy Armstrong, would you please start your magic? People want to see what you do.
Oh, now you got the pressure on me. I'm calling it magic. Thanks for having me. I joined this group. I didn't even know about it because I live in Rochester, and I had moved to Rochester in 2017. And I think there was somebody I knew of that had worked in a show here, and I was like, oh, watercolor, because we don't have, in Rochester, we don't have just a watercolor organization. So I joined it, but then COVID hit, so I've never been here. I've never been in person other than to an opening, last opening, I think, in the spring. But thank you for having me here. So I was a graphic designer for most all of my life until the last couple of years, and I love doing artwork, but I was afraid to try to make a living at just that. So I went into graphic design and moved to the Midwest, lived there in Colorado, lived in Madison, Wisconsin, and Colorado for my whole adult life until 10 years ago. My husband and I moved back to New York State because my family was back here and elderly parents and all that, so we moved back. And we lived first in Trumansburg for a few years, and then we moved to Rochester. So I was just still getting used to the area, and I still don't, and I think everybody pronounces things funny here. Like Charlotte is Charlotte, and all the towns around seem to have funny pronunciations. But anyway, I'll tell you how I got into watercolor in particular, because I'd never had any training in watercolor. So I'd studied visual communications, and I did all kinds of painting with maybe gouache and tempera, maybe a different kind of tempera. It was so long ago. And a little bit of oil, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And I never learned watercolor, and I didn't think anything of it because I really didn't have a particular medium. And I would only do artwork when I needed to give a gift to somebody or something, because I was so busy with my design work. And it was just really time sensitive, and I was just always under the gun and exhausted and didn't have time for the creative stuff. So I didn't do enough to really feel like I had a feel for it. And then I had 2 kids within 19 months of each other and decided to stay home for a couple of years from design. And didn't want to bring out, I felt like, oh, I have not a lot of time, but I need to do some creative energy. And so I thought, well, I don't want to use oils, because at that time I think still turpentine, all those smells and stuff I didn't want. So, I could figure out, I'll just paint in watercolor as if it was any other medium. And so I learned very quickly that it has its own issues and challenges. And the first thing I learned was how much it lightens when it dries. That took me a while. And then I didn't even know that it was a technique to glaze over something. My first painting I tried to do was magnolia blossoms. And I was trying to do really subtle colors, but it would just flatten out and disappear. And so not knowing anything about glazing, I would just think, oh, well, it's ruined anyway, I'll just go over it again, And then I found out, well, that's really a way of working, and you can build up the color and do some really interesting things with it. So it probably took me 5 or 6 years before I took a class, and then I thought, why didn't I do this sooner? Because all the little detail things that I learned, that I didn't know that made it easier. So I teach now. I've been teaching for 5 or 6 years in watercolor. I paint in other mediums. I only teach in watercolor. And I do like to plein air paint, but typically I'm painting in oil when I'm outside because I can make quick changes. And because the way I work in studio with watercolor, it's a little bit more labor intensive and lots of layers and things. So I do have to get brave and learn how to get better at plein air painting and watercolor. So that's one of the things on my to-do list. Okay, so I'm part of a gallery that 10 other people and I started up in Pittsford, which is just outside of Rochester. And we started it right before COVID hit, because that was really good planning on our part. But we've kept going, and now we have 23 members. And so I do that, and I teach, and I paint, and that kind of fills up all my time. So first I thought, So I have some things over there that you saw. The piece that's framed is actually, Martha's being a real sweetheart, and she's going to deliver it. That's going to be in the upcoming show. It's called Rust and Rivets, and it's part of a machine, a mining machine. When I lived in Colorado, I didn't see this, but we were back visiting, and there was a museum for mining machines, and they had these things outside. That's why there's a little bit of light on it. It's not tucked into the cave somewhere. And those colors were there. I just punched them up a bit, you know. I just, like, when I saw it, I kind of pushed it a little bit. And I really have fun doing metal. I don't know why. I've done quite a few machine paintings. But I was telling Mike earlier that after I do a machine painting, I really, really need to do a flower or something that's much more forgiving and much softer, and it's just like a relief. So I kind of mixed it up. And I do enjoy doing all different kinds of things. I get bored if it's just one kind of thing. I tend to not do as many landscapes because when I'm doing landscapes, I'm usually outside and then I'm painting in oil. So I have a few, but not as many as other things like still lifes. So some of those things over there you see are actually prints, like the ones leaning up that aren't in the middle framed. And then I have some newer works that I haven't framed yet that are on the table. I just put them in a sleeve, but they're not prints, they're originals, if you want to take a look during the break or something. And then a couple pieces that I just have. I have two pieces on one board, and let's see if we can everybody see where it's at? Does that work okay? Okay, so this is one that I did with one of my virtual class. I teach in person and I teach virtually. And I had to mark it right top on it because I can't even tell myself which the top was. But I was teaching them painting white on white blossoms and how, you know, put some color in and kind of get a little bit more creative with it. I'm not done with it. I still have to adjust some values and do some things to it. But we took 2 classes and did this. Usually each class maybe we'll learn something about painting metal. It's not usually a whole painting, but they wanted to do 2 classes. And then last week I got a call. I was supposed to do a demo in Pittsford, actually, the art club there. I was supposed to do a demo in October, and all of a sudden I got a call saying, our September person is sick, and can you do tomorrow night? So I quick whipped up. I'd done a similar, like I'd used some of these plants in another painting, and this was a photo shoot. I kind of went around and did at my sister's house, and I loved this blue pot. It's not finished. This is like a chair. I have to put the detailing in. I have to do some adjusting to it. But I was trying to get the richness out of this glazed pot. So those were 2 things that are still in the works. I just thought I'd grab them. And then a funny thing happened on the way to the demo. No, last week. I had planned to do a different painting. Last week, I had the drawing all done. And then on Saturday, I was part of a plenary event in Clifton Springs. And I wandered out to a farm, and I went down their road to their house to ask permission to paint there. And nobody would answer. And I thought, okay, I'll have to paint out by the road. I'll have to paint the barn and the trees, and I'm gonna have to like move everything in my brain to get it to work. And on my way back down the road, I looked off to the side, and there was a pond with these exotic, wonderful things going on. I got out and snapped a couple photos, and it was a lotus pond. And it looked like something out of Dr. Seuss because most of the flowers had fallen off, and then the centers, seed pods, looked like shower heads. Only they were all in beautiful pinks and purples and things, and just sticking way up. They were huge. Huge leaves that were both warm and cool, greens, and I just was so excited about this spot, and it was a beautiful day. Well, long story, I won't get into back and forth, and they weren't going to let me paint there. When I finally found somebody, it's like, I don't think so. Okay, I'll go out to the road again and paint the barn. But then they decided to change their mind, and so I had so much fun. That changed my mind about what I was going to paint today. And so this was what I was going to paint, which is a plant that I have at home that I love, and it's a escargot begonia, which has this beautiful swirl to it. And it's also very tricky trying to get this silvery blue, and I mean, I thought it would be tricky, so I tested it out, and this was just a tester before I was going to do the painting. And okay, not going to do that anymore. Before I get into the piece I'm going to demo, and I don't know how far I'll get with it because I don't usually paint a whole painting in an hour or whatever. I'm going to just show you what I often show the beginning of a class, just so you get an idea of, it may be just what you do, I don't know, but lots of times I have people that haven't painted in watercolor before, or they haven't painted this way before with the layering. So I'm going to see if I can show you what's on my computer and go by just one or two step by step. So let's just see. Can you guys see that? All right, I'll see if I can figure out how to make this go. Okay. This still life was, this picture was a silver picture that my husband's grandfather won in a lawn bowling tournament. He was from Scotland, but he had immigrated to Chicago, and then he won this big lawn bowling tournament. So it's this etched, and it's this beautiful old silver picture. And then some of the other pieces we'd been given by relatives and things, and a friend had given the fabric. So here I am showing you, I always start with, like, what is the lightest color in that area, you know? And start there. And start with my lights and work up. Most of the time, I sometimes switch it around. So here I've just put the faintest. You can see, like spots where I noticed it's really warm and really cool, and then I started putting the background in. I didn't want to go all the way. I don't usually go really, really black. I know some people do this, but I want to get it dark, but I want to get there in stages because I don't want to worry about anything if I hit the edges. I don't want any heavy paint running in, so I tend to just go to like 50% of where I'm going to end up for the background, just so it's not glaring white. And then I start putting in, I work through the whole thing and make sure everything's basically covered that's not going to be white as a map. So I can see where I'm going, and then I start moving around, basically like, where's there an area that I won't stick my arm in it while it's wet? I'll turn it around and work on this other spot. You can see the little checkerboard reflection. My floor was checkerboard in that house when I painted this, and so I wanted to make sure I caught that. So I put that in right away so I wouldn't forget, and some hints of red and things like that in the silver. And then I started working on reflections and working up the fabric. And lots of warmth in the silver, but then there are a lot of really cool blue grays going on too. I think this is the final. And then I'll just maybe show one, oh no, that must be the final. And then this is, I'll just show this one and then I won't go any farther, but this is peaches for baking. And so I wanted there are two silver bowls behind these peaches, and I'm sorry that I don't have the reference in front of you first, but I wanted there to be kind of lost and found edges with the silver bowls in the background, going into a dark background. But I wanted to sort of do a subtle shift, so I put that yellow back there to go underneath the dark, and then my bowls will stay a little cool. And I don't even know if you'll see it on here, but in person, if you were looking at it, you might see it. So first I laid down what I saw. I pay a lot of attention, of course, to the warms and the cools, what's happening there. So you can see that blue on the top of that one peach. It was in the shadow side, but it's that kind of fuzzy peach. It kind of ends up helping it look fuzzy, and I'm starting to put in a few reflections. Oh, I thought I had one straight on, but I don't. So anyway, that gives you an idea how I work in steps. And then the only other thing I wanted to show you the beautiful pond before I start demoing. And what I did for what I'm going to work on is there was not one. I wanted to blow it up big enough, so I didn't want to work on too many details for this. So I pulled pieces from different photos and did a composite on my computer. And I often do a lot of adjustments on my computer before I get started. So I'll just flip through so you can see how beautiful these leaves and the pods sticking up. I mean, it's just...
Is this what you won Best in Show for?
And then I won Best in Show, and then I sold the painting. So I was very excited. But you know what I mean? I was just so excited about the place and that I think it just, I don't know, it just translated into... So I think I'm going to zero in on different areas for different paintings, but right now, this is what I'm going to paint. And this is like 3 or 4 different photos that I've pieced some of the stems and moved them over so they would be in the right spot and things like that. And I loved, like the back side of that one leaf that's folded over and you see the veins, and then the really warm greens, and then the very bluish, all of that was exciting to me. So my printout is not nearly as exciting as looking on a screen, but I think I'm gonna see if I usually just work mainly from that, and then sometimes I look up at my computer to get a better color. So how I start things is once I get something ready on the computer, the size I'm going to do it, and I usually grid it out on the computer. And then I put a piece of, actually I use newsprint rather than tracing paper, so that I don't want it to be see-through because I'm going to have to then use graphite on the back, and I want to see what I'm doing to transfer it. So I do my drawing, I grid that out, and I do my drawing freehand from that, but the reason I use a grid is because, well, as you all know, you can't really move things very easily, and I don't want to be erasing a lot, and so I want to make sure it's pretty accurate before I start painting. And then I went ahead, just for tonight, I think it would be too hard to see where things were, so what I ended up doing was this afternoon or this morning, I just put in a few areas to help see where things were before I get really started. And then I printed one out without the grid, just so I was hoping it would be better color, but I think it's enough information for me to see, really they're pretty extreme shifts from the blues and the greens and yellows, and back in here it's really filled in, and it really wouldn't be, it's the trees, and they're very cool, and so I'll get to that if I can, but initially I want to catch all the light areas first and start working back and forth. I think that this is Fabriano. I also work on arches. It's 140 pound, and I sometimes work on 300 pound, but since I've been teaching, I don't want my students to have to buy 300 pound, and I feel like the challenges that they'll have with that, I should be doing too, right? There's a little bit of warping, okay, I should have to show them how to deal with it and stuff. So this is 140 pound. And let's see. Always have my setup like this. There's not much, I always have little scraps here to test out on before I get going, and I have my Viva, probably a lot of you use, paper towels that I use constantly, right? So I'm constantly like adjusting the water in my brush. So just going with the traditional way, I'm just going to start with laying down bigger swatches. I might even use my mop brush, and I'll just get a little bit of, I think I didn't clean this all up.
Do you have a favorite paint brand, or do you
Yeah, I use mostly Daniel Smith. And I can't even remember how that all started, but somebody had recommended it and I like it. I have some Core that I really like, QOR, and a few odds and ends, but it's mostly Daniel Smith. So I'm just going to get thin enough. I'm going to just come into this flower where I see the lightest and just hit most areas. I'm not going to get too, I don't want to, this first layer that goes down is always like fun because you don't have to be so careful, right? It's just going to help me as I go forward. And then this looks yellow, but I know that it has more green in it, so I'm going to just add a little bit of rich green gold, maybe to my yellow. And I can adjust it later, but it might be too much, but then maybe a little quinacridone gold. And let it just kind of, I want to use it fairly thin, but I want to get that warmth down there. And stay clear of the areas that are going to be really cool. Now this area, this leaf here that's sticking up is in the light and quite yellow. So I'm going to, again, my rich green gold gets me there part way. I'm going to just add a little bit of Hansa yellow medium, maybe a little bit of deep. And it's probably going to be too yellow, but I'd rather have a layer of brighter yellow underneath, and then I can come back in and tone it down. And I always tell my students, you can always tone something down, but you can't get the vibrancy back again. So err on the side of too bright. And then if you need to, you can always use the complementary color in a thin layer to just tone it down. Now, I'm not trying to get any of the details in yet. I'm just putting this base down so I can find my way around my painting. I'm going to add just a little bit more green.
So the picture you're working off of was a composite?
Yes.
You did that in your computer first?
Right, and I did it only because, I just snapped quick photos, not really planning to do the watercolor painting from it, and I would have composed it differently if I had thought about it that way. But the good news is, these people who were hesitant about letting me paint on their farm, because they really didn't want a bunch of people showing up, they didn't. Anyway. Now they're suddenly turned 100% around. They sent me an email last night. I offered to give them a print of the painting because it had sold, and I said, well, I'd like, if you can confirm this is your or address, because I mailed them a thank you, I'll have a print made for you. And so they wrote back, and they're like, anytime you want to paint here, and when the lotus are all in bloom, you can come back, or you can come. We have all these dahlias, and we have. And so I'm in heaven because I've got that. I know next year I can really get some great stuff, and I might just do a whole series because it was really lovely.
So if we went to the farm, we'd never see this?
If you...
It's the composition.
Right. Not exactly, but I mean, it's not that far off. It's just that I pulled some things in where they would have been stretched out and kind of, I'd have to be farther away. I wanted them a little bit closer. So at this point, I'd probably be smart to get some of the bright yellow stems and stuff before I lose them, because I don't want to cover them up accidentally. So I'm going to go with a really nice.
Are you using just Photoshop, or are you using another program?
Yeah, I still have Photoshop from my design days. I purposely got rid of my other design kind of programs because I didn't want to keep getting pulled back into doing design when I really want to be painting. So I let those go, but because I use Photoshop, I had an old version of Photoshop that I just had on my computer, so it comes in handy for these little adjustments. And when I'm teaching, sometimes I'll put a photo up that we're going to paint, and I'll be able to isolate with little circles all different areas of the painting, and then drop away the painting, and so you can see the colors more accurately. And it's helpful to the students to do that. So I use it that way. I use it a few different ways.
When you did the background, the yellowy kind of grasses in the background, so you painted each section around the stem. You didn't use mask.
No.
And they look very uniform, and so did you kind of put some down all along, and then, or did you kind of paint each section with both colors at once?
I painted this brighter green. It looks very gold here, but on the screen I could tell it was much more of a brighter green. And I wet it first,
Okay.
and then I put that down, and then it was still sort of drying when I came back in, because and then the water, so this was different. You see how dark I have in my image. But when I was there were reflections of sky that put this blue in to the painting I did in oil. So I knew that was there, and I thought, you know what, I'll start there. I can always darken it, but I want to isolate the areas that could be, in some areas I definitely would bring in darks, but I want to isolate where there could be blue, and it will help me find my way around too. So for now it's blue. Up near the grasses, I think it's going to get darker and have a little bit of hint of reflection maybe when I'm done. So let's see. So some of these stems were, it was just so cool. What looked pink here, they were really like, if the sun wasn't on them, they were kind of brownish. But when the sun hit them, honestly, I felt like it was Dr. Seuss came to life. And I didn't even know that these were lotuses when I took the photos. And then when I finally got a chance to talk to the man and ask him if I could paint there, and he had to ask him what they were, I didn't really know. Because I had painted water lilies before, and they weren't anything like this. They were, I guess water lilies are down more flat to the water, right? And these came up, they were like huge. Each leaf was just giant. So let's see. I usually just, always put my finger wherever I'm going so I don't lose my place. Little things like that help. I always, if I'm using tape, I staple my paper down, and I don't always remember to tape it off so I have a nice edge, because it's going to get framed, so it doesn't matter. But I always, if I do tape it, I come out about 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch outside of the area, so that when you go to mat it, it doesn't have a sliver of unfinished look to it. And then if there are times where things pool up and you have a little accident, it often happens outside of that area. So I don't tape it right to the edge. I give myself a little bit of breathing space there. Okay. And I guess this is pretty bright back here. And like when I was putting it together, I made up some of the stems so that it would look like they went underneath. It was really kind of just a mess underneath these things. It was just so many leaves on top of leaves, you really couldn't tell what's happening. So I sort of opened it up and tried to simplify it as I went. So I have maybe one other stem that needs to be kind of greenish yellow, and then I think I move into some other colors. And there's nothing too tricky here. I'm just putting it down and not trying to mix too much. Every once in a while, if I notice something, I might float another color in there. But like this would get darker because it's down underneath, so I'll make this a little bit darker down here. And I have a few mixed greens that, I usually end up adjusting everything, so it's not like it comes straight out of the tube usually, but the ones that I kind of leave on my palette are sap green, and then I have, the rich green gold, which is more yellowy, and then I have undersea green, which is really kind of brownish. And then what I've found I really like to do is mix it with another one that's ultramarine turquoise, which is so blue-green. It's too much, right? But I just end up all the time like, okay, I need to dull that down. I'll use my undersea green. And even though they seem very different, sometimes it's just enough, to make it work. So I do that. And then I have this really garish green on here that I would never use it as it is. But I went out and bought it here. I'll show you. It's, what is it? Phthalo yellow green. Look how bright that is. I mean, it's just really bright. But I was having trouble mixing. If I wanted to mix a green that wasn't really yellowy green, it would dull it every time if I tried to cool it off. So I went out and got that so that it's just like a little bit cool. And for things like glazing or just dropping into something else, I found it useful, but I don't know if it's useful enough to keep it on my palette. I'm debating whether to take it off. Okay. All right.
Kathy, how many colors do you have in your palette?
Oh, how many do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 22. I never knew that. Now I know. And then I have like lots of colors in boxes that if I'm doing a particular painting, especially a floral, it's really hard to get some of the reds and pinks and oranges really, really vibrant that the flowers are. Sometimes it's next to impossible. So then I'll go to like my box that has all the reds in it or the pinks and pull out what I'm gonna and test it all out. And I have as many variety of those as I can nearby so that I don't have a boring just one color of something, you know, so that I can kind of let them mix. All right, finish these stems real quick before I move on. I'm going to shift to just, this is just more of a quinacridone gold, so we have a variety here. And it's not quite all the same color. And then there's a little bit of kind of a red going down this stem. I'm going to put down the gold or green, and then I'm going to grab a little bit of, I have a burnt scarlet here, maybe a tiny bit of orange in it, and just let it come down the side here and mix a little bit. I didn't know I was going to have such accompaniment. All right. And, yeah. I should have just grabbed a little bit of pink while this was wet up here, and I'm going to do that right now so I don't lose it along the way. And it's really subtle, but I guess it doesn't have to be as subtle as I see it here. I'll just put a little bit in, and then I'm going to just touch it with water here and there. Well, unfortunately, it's called unavailable. Everybody comments on it when I have a class. They're like, oh, I want to get one of those. And then apparently some of my students have searched, and I've searched, and they don't make it. So there's not even a name on it, so I don't even know. But
did you put the colors that you wanted in the little pot?
yes. So they were just empty. And honestly, I don't close them up unless they're ready to like spill or something. I don't close them up because I don't know if other people have a problem. It can get moldy if you're not painting with them all the time. So I just let them dry out, and then I just spray them again.
It'd be nice for plein air because it wouldn't, you could throw it in a matchstick and it wouldn't.
Yeah. Although it's kind of big for plein air, so I think, the kind that fold up, I do have something to do plein air, I just don't practice it enough. But the ones that fold up are kind of convenient. Okay, where was I? Well, I'll add a little bit more of that kind of rusty color going down the side. It's sort of all over the place. And all right, now I'm going to go ahead and do like the pods. They look like little skirts, and I wish I had at least a couple of them turned towards the camera because they're so cool looking with the little, they actually have the little holes in them like shower heads do. They look like they're shower heads. But, okay, so I'm going to, I have to guess here a little bit color because I know that this is more of a green than a yellow, but I'll just see what I come up with here. And we've got to get these little scallopy edges. And I could put them in after it was wet, but I think I'll just lay it down a little bit now and then go over the whole thing. Yeah, I'm losing most of it, so I didn't wait long enough for it to dry. I didn't want it all the way dry, but that's a little bit much. So I can just come back in with a little less moisture on my brush and put just a hint of shape in here.
Just so you know, this is a Scottish church.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, it's a dance group.
Ah, that's great. I'll have to tell my husband. He missed out on that.
They're actually in costumes,
Oh, wow.
and they said anybody wants to come and photo and take pictures of them, they're more than welcome.
So this isn't just practice. This is them actually getting dressed up and everything.
Tonight's open house.
Oh, okay. All right. So I might come in and I'll do more details later, but this is just enough to get started. And then while I have this on my brush, I'm just going to run it down the side here. And maybe put a hint of some, just because it's here on my brush, I might as well do it. Again, I'll be working up the values more, but it's just sort of a little hint of what I'm going to have to do. So of this group, how many of you paint watercolor outside? Not quite half, it looks like, right? Yeah. I gotta get brave. Okay. All right, this is an odd color that I think is like a really pale, peachy color. So let's just see. Lots of times I just grab what's ever on my palette and I just start mushing it together and see if I can get there. And I'm not sure right now.
Was the painting that won Best in Show done in watercolor?
No, that was the oil paint that I did on Saturday. So we had, it was just a one-day event, and we couldn't start before 9 in the morning, and we had to be done with it framed and turned into the gallery to hang for the show at 1 o'clock. And then they did it up so nicely. I mean, it's a great event.
Was it plein air?
Yep, it was all plein air.
Actually doing it on the farm?
Yep,
that day?
yep.
So you took a lot of your time just trying to negotiate.
Yeah, it was like, I was getting a little nervous, like, okay. And then he said, so the guy came down, the farmer came down down the road after I parked and I was setting up, I was starting a sketch of the barn. And then he finally came down because they pretended they weren't home, you know? And I think he wanted to see what I was doing at the end of it was not on their property anymore, but it was right next to it. And so he came down in like a golf cart kind of thing he was riding in. So once they decided it was okay for me to be there, he was like, well, I want to show you, I got another pond with more lotus. And so hop in, and my wife wants you to see this. And so I got in, and they took me through the fence where the cows were and all that, and I'm thinking, uh-oh, like, how am I going to get done in time? And then I ended up saying, well, the other pond was filled with lotus, but they were way out, like on an island, and I was real close to the stuff I was already about ready to set up to. So I just said, well, thanks, I think I'm going to go back to where I started, and that worked out better. But sometime I would like to go back and get as many photos as I can.
So what was this show in what group?
So it's a competition that, it's the Main Street Arts Gallery in Clifton Springs. And they do such a great job. They get funding, arts funding. So they have these, swag bags like you would get if you were in a week-long event. And then they send you across the street after you drop things off and to this nice restaurant. And we had a feast over there. And then just about the time you finish eating, they've already judged the work. And they go back over and look at everybody's work. And then the public can come in, and it's just for 2 hours, and then that's it. But yeah, it was really fun to win. I don't think I've ever gotten Best of Show before, so that was kind of fun. And because I don't...
Do they do it every year?
Well, they started it 3 years ago, and they're going to plan to do it. So yeah, you should look into it. Like I said, it's just one day, so it's not that big a commitment. And you know what I did? Because I didn't even have time. Clifton Springs is about 35, 40 minutes away from where I live. And I didn't have time. I started teaching a couple classes, and I had different things going on to go and drive around and figure out spots, right? So what I did, and maybe some of you have done this before, I went on Google, and I drove around the countryside on Google on my computer the night before. And that's how I found, like, as you can swivel around, and it looked like, well, that farm looks like it's interesting. It's like an old family farm rather than a big old, factory farm. And it just looked like the angles, and it just looked like maybe I could find something there. And that's how I ended up going there. And they had cows, which I got some nice backlighting for a picture. It's kind of far away, but they had tons of stuff. It was just very nice, very
So
nice.
it was all media, in other words, anybody
Yep.
could do whatever they wanted?
Yep.
How many artists participated?
There were almost 50, I think 48 maybe.
You had to register beforehand, but
You had to register beforehand. But last year I did it for, that was the second one they had, and somebody told me about it, and I did it last year. And I stayed in town in a little village, cute little village, for that one. So this time I wanted to do something a little different. I forgot my train of thought just left me there about, this was the third year, so yeah. So again, what I'm putting down now, they're not finished. I'll be coming back through, and so I wanted to show you what I always give my students, these are like leftover bookmarks from when I lived in Madison, and I punched holes in 2 ends of it, and I use them for value finders, and it's much easier to see what you need to correct by using that. So I have some over on the table if anybody wants. I mean, they're basically simple things you could make yourself, but I have them there if anybody would like. And what I do is, like, when I'm getting closer to being done with a painting and I'm trying to decide, well, something just doesn't seem right, or what do I need to do with this? And if I had a good printout, I could lay it down there, and I could lay it down here, and I could see exactly what I need to do with it. You know, I can compare those. Oh, I need to make it cooler. I need to make, the value's not dark enough yet. That kind of thing. It works. It's very simple, and yet it's very helpful. Okay, so I have a couple brushes that I really like right now, and usually I don't have that much in particular. But they're both, and I don't even remember who, they're both Princeton Aqua Elite. This one is a long round, and it has the nicest point. And this is just a regular round, also has a nice point. And sometimes I need this one because this is almost too thin for certain areas to hold enough water, but I've been using them a lot lately, so I just pass that on, that they're nice brushes. Okay, so I'm going to keep going with the pods while I'm working on these, the base of the pods, putting in the pinks. And then grabbing some more magenta purples for, and kind of mostly pigment, not much water. While this is wet, and I can just add some color here, grab some. I don't really know when you guys take breaks, so make sure somebody stops me.
When would you like to take a break?
Doesn't matter to me. It really doesn't. So whatever your normal time is, I don't have any idea what time it is. About now? Okay.
You want to stop? You want to keep
Sure.
going? You want people to look over your shoulder up there? Or?
Yeah, maybe I'll keep working for a few minutes and you guys can take your break. Okay? Because I know I'm not going to get done. I'd like to get a little farther.
We'll get some Cheetos and then chalk over your shoulder.
Okay. That works.
Question about the whole, checking the value, what?
Yeah.
What, tell me what this is.
So all you do is, like if you're working from a photo reference, otherwise if you're just trying to see a color better, you can go, oh yeah, well, I thought it was a little bit more gold, but boy, I got to add some more yellow to get it more gold. You just are comparing things. So for example, this.
What you do is you can compare what's down and what you want.
Yes. So I don't have the reference. I don't have the reference for this, but it'd be hard to see the colors sometimes. It'd be hard to notice when it was set on.
It's against white.
So you can see that it just isolates it so that you can then compare.
With the
Yeah.
picture. So she sees what.
So say if this was the color I was really going for, which I'm not because it didn't print out nicely, I would look at these two things and I'd go, oh, I want to get
I
much
see.
more
Oh, so you're
gold,
comparing the two.
tone it down, you're comparing the two. Or you can just use it to just to see where you are.
Okay, it's who to.
Yeah.
No, it is, it's just a simple thing.
It's very simple, but it's just helpful sometimes, just to be able to isolate it. I don't usually close them though, because I want them to dry so they don't get moldy. But yeah, how am I
Hard
gonna?
to see your real colors because they get a little distorted.
Oh yeah, I bet they do.
Not bad, it's not bad. I just wanted to see what you're working.
Well, and this isn't quite right either. So what I really need to do is, I thought I was going to have my phone in here and I left it in the car, but I should probably open this for my own sake and refer to that.
Oh, yes.
So I think maybe I'll do that. I'll just leave that right
My
there.
sister went to a workshop or a demo that you did in Rochester.
Oh, really?
Yes. Her name was Debbie Bloom. She texted me. She said, "You know Kathy Armstrong?" I said,
No.
I don't know her. I've seen her. She just loved it.
Is-
She's
so
just
it's-
getting started in watercolor.
Does her husband paint? Because there's a
No.
blue. Okay. Okay. There's a
Sorry,
guy
just
whose
saying,
last name is.
famous.
Oh yeah. That'll be the day.
Thank you for coming.
Sure, thank you for asking. Let's see.
Did you always work as fast as you're working now, or is that something that kind of came with experience? This would take me a week
Oh, really?
to do.
I guess I tend to paint, like even in oils, I tend to paint sort of fast, but I never really knew that it was fast. It's only because it's the way I do it.
Compared to
But I don't know because you only know what you do, you know. But I think roughly that fast.
it's gorgeous.
But it's not going to be fast enough to finish. All right, so that's these pods under here. You can hardly see that they're there, but they're really grainy. I'm going to use some of that strange
There is
color.
quite a difference between the computer here.
I did turn this one. It really isn't that direction, but to get the top of it. But it's probably not going to look like anything when I'm done because it's so in the shade.
I didn't want to embarrass you,
Uh-oh.
but I wanted to know where's your sketchbook?
My sketchbook. Yeah, none here today.
Okay. I mean,
Do I do a lot of drawings? Is that what you say? Do I draw first?
yeah, no.
Well, if I'm, I don't do a separate drawing in graphite.
Well, that's okay, 'cause we,
So I usually do, like I do a value study in paint,
yeah.
and I didn't show that at all here because I just felt like I didn't have enough time.
Because I've been a member here, I'm an amateur. And that's why I sit next to the guy with the camera and tell him, focus here, but they did a demonstration at Birchville Penny,
At where?
the art gallery,
Oh, okay.
and when the artist showed up and said, does everything on the computer, this organization almost booed him.
Oh. Well, you don't mean, did he do digital painting, you mean? It wasn't, or did he just get things prepared?
Photographs all over the world. He's a well-known artist, and he'd go and find artwork on the walls of buildings in Europe, and then he'd photograph a statue and combine the two,
Oh, okay.
and he would do it in elephant size.
So, but would he do the painting himself? Would he paint it himself?
Yeah.
Okay, so there was painting involved.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
He basically did all his
His drawing and prep, he did it on the computer. Well, what I do is I do a lot of, like I said, I do a lot of adjusting and cropping, and you know, all of that stuff
The
is.
thing with the computers, a backlight.
I know, but it gets me. It pushes farther than this, and I can also see some things that I can't see here like, to understand what's going on. Thank you.
Do we save like your background for last?
Do I save it for last? Not always, but often if that's a darker area, I do. Like I do the darker part last so that I can kind of clean things up. But I usually don't leave it this white. You know, like once I get everything done here, I'll put something in here, even if it's not the final background. And then I'll go back and then start adjusting things as I need. Well, thank you.
You hold your brush like a pencil.
I'm sorry?
You hold your brush like a pencil.
Well, not always, but I am here. Yeah, I have a lot of detail areas, so I guess I am a little bit.
Kind of gives you good control.
Yeah. Maybe I'll.
Do your students ever just say, we just want to watch paint?
Sometimes. I always like, no. You have to go paint. You have to go paint.
No, you say that's an old palette, like something you bought years ago.
Forgot I had that on. I did buy it
Do you
years
like
ago.
close all those up?
No. I don't. Actually, it's kind of a hassle, and you can see some have broken off.
Does it have a cover that goes over?
No, it doesn't. So I almost think, I mean, I just put them in a plastic bag. I almost think I would like that better, but a lot of people say, oh, I want a palette just like that, but it's kind of a hassle.
Pain had to close them and flip
They
them open
don't
again
close
because they
nicely, and
Your map is different. Is that a or a,
what kind, you mean?
what make is it?
Synthetic squirrel quill. It is Winsor Newton, maybe? I have a couple different mops, but
Looks nice.
I didn't bring the other one, so.
What was the one you mentioned, Kathy, with the real nice point to it?
This long, it's called a long round.
That's nice.
And it's just like, you don't need to get a little brush. You get such a nice point with it, you can just use
I
that.
gotta read it with my glasses.
Oh, I can maybe read it.
Can you read it?
It says 450LR. It's just got numbers.
Oh, it just says numbers.
Yeah,
Is
you
that a
wanna write
Princeton?
down?
Is that a Princeton?
It doesn't, oh yeah, it is Princeton. Long round, it's number 8.
Number 8?
It's got a number 8 on it.
Okay. I love your work.
Thank you so much.
It's almost contemporary.
I love the dogwoods.
Yeah, I did that many years ago, but I don't know. People seem to like that one, so I thought, well, I had a print of it. Yeah, thank you. Oops, that's too dark. Well, I use a variety. I don't just stick to one kind, but the kinds I was mentioning that I really like right now are these Princeton Aqua Elite, and this one is a long round, which makes a beautiful point. I don't get the super expensive brushes, but you know, decent quality without going crazy.
I use the Princeton, but it's the Neptune, and I like this.
What is that like? What's different about it? The Neptune. Why is it?
Neptune,
Just holds lots of water.
it's a little stiffer.
Okay.
Nice. I like that.
Yeah.
Princeton.
Good picture.
That's what I want.
Princeton Aqua.
Dripping. I'm dripping.
Can I get you anything? You want something to drink or?
Is there a water? I would love water. Thank you so much. I'm just a water drinker. Okay. Maybe I'll keep forgetting I have a mic on. I hope it's not. So I keep forgetting I have a mic on. Yeah. What does? Oh, no, I meant a mic. I've got a mic on me. I hope it's not recording everything here, but it probably is. Well, I don't either. Now that's a nasty thing happening there. So I'm gonna just wet the whole thing, yeah. I think I did, because now I gotta just go back in there.
This is tap water, if that's
That's great. Thank you so much. I forgot what color I had on my brush that I set down. There we go.
Kathy, when you sign your name on one of those dark areas there in white, is that gouache? The Chinese
I
white?
have which one were you referring to? Because a while ago I don't know what I would have, but I just bought it. I bought it like a pen that will do paint white.
okay.
If I was smart, I would think ahead, and you know how you can use masking fluid,
No.
but I don't ever think ahead usually that far.
It's one of the real dark flower ones that has your name in white.
Yeah, I probably did.
Oh,
Just
okay, it's like a pen.
well, if it's is it the plant on the left? Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a pen. It's a pen. Yeah.
You'll bring us back to order.
Okay. All right, thanks. Thank you. All right. So I've been working the whole time trying to get that first layer down. And
Do you have a particular brand of brush that you like to use?
not just one kind, it's like whatever one is the newest one. Whatever one makes the nicest point still. That's why I mentioned that Princeton that I like right now. But, you know, I've got all different kinds of brushes. I have little short, I like the little flat ones for lifting, and those are usually better if they're synthetic, so they don't bend quite so much and things like that. So I'm really, now I'm getting into the warms and cools even more. As I get into these big leaves, there are pretty vibrant blues going on in the shade underneath some of the big leaves, lotus leaves. And that was one of the things that really interested me, is this shifts in temperature. I had my easel set up for of course this was the oil painting again, but I had my easel set up so that if somebody had bumped me, I probably would have ended up in the pond, because the front of the tripod was going down the bank in order to get positioned underneath a tree so I wouldn't have to stand in the sun the whole time. It is precarious.
Kathy, I think you mentioned that when you first started this afternoon to put that background grass in, you wet it first,
Yeah.
and then, but in general, in these smaller areas, you're not wetting them first?
Sometimes I am, but lots of times I'll use like the lightest color of that area, really juicy, and then I can drop in other colors. So it's sort of like wetting it. It's so wet already that I don't need to do a separate pass. I did it here to keep it a little damp so that I could move along without it being, you know, I just wanted to keep a little bit of fuzziness, and now be putting a little bit more variation in it when I get closer to being done. But I just wanted something there to separate out, see where the plants were going to be. And I don't like to just have one green or blue or whatever it is. I like to shift it, because really when you're out in nature, you know, the light is changing everything all the time. So to me, it's better to have some variation, as long as you can kind of tell, oh, it's still supposed to be part of this plant. So I don't worry that everything, if I'm not doing it like a flat background for maybe a still life and I want a really flat background, if I'm not doing something like that, then I purposely want a little bit of variation in there. And I don't want to mix it all ahead of time, you know what I mean? I'm remixing as I go often, just so I don't end up with exactly the same thing each area. But see, now I put this really light, it's bluish, really light, and then while it's wet, I'll go and put some of those darks in there as it dries. I could go back and do it later, and I'll probably have to go back and adjust it. But I might as well put a hint of it down now to kind of give me, and if maybe it'll be right, maybe it'll be all I need. But it's probably too wet right now, so I gotta make sure I get most of the moisture out of my brush. And it's still a lot of sheen on here, so it's probably a little bit, it's going to spread a little bit much, but I have most of the water out of my brush, so at least I've got a little bit more control that way. And I'm putting in some of this blue shadow. How many layers? Well, It depends upon painting a lot. I might do one area with a ton of layers, and if there's something like a sky, maybe it's just one. I try to get it in one so it doesn't have that overworked look to the sky. I think over the years I do a bit fewer layers than I used to, just because maybe I can get to where I need to be faster. But I don't know. It could be 2 or 3 layers. It could be 10 if there's really something I need to. But that's usually just a small area. It's not the whole thing. So now this hopefully it's dry enough. I think it's dry enough. I'm just going to glaze over this is one leaf here. The front of it is really pale, and this gets really dark. I'm just going to go over the whole thing, and it'll darken this back part a little. It's still not enough, but then I can maybe punch in some other colors. I don't think I have enough of it. And this, I can't even tell what this is. It's the top of this. Okay. All right. So it's starting to come together a little bit. Again, it's just probably going to be mainly the first pass. So while that's still damp, I'm going to get some of my deeper bluish, probably should add some green to it because I think that the image itself, well, it's pretty blue, blue-green. It's a little bit bright, but again, I can do a very thin glaze of something if I need to tone it down later. Okay, this is still wet. We'll see if I can get it to work without bleeding in the wrong places. Yeah, it's going over the edge there. So I use my thirsty brush all the time. It's wet, it's clean. I take the moisture out, and then I can finesse the edges. I like some of it spreading. I just don't want it to go too crazy. Like it went into this other part of this leaf. So then I'm going to take my paper towel and I'm going to just fold it over. I dampened it and I can just push down on it to keep it from spreading. Okay, so I've got a really cool leaf under here, really cold, not cool, but really cool temperature to that leaf. And I'm going to tone it down. I'm going to make it bluish, but I'm also going to add a little bit of my undersea green just to kind of dull it a little, or maybe a little purple too. Let's see what happens there. And I need to make sure this edge isn't going to run too much, because I usually work in a whole separate area, you know. I don't work right next to it like that. But, oh, it's going to spread. So I'll just deal with it. It's okay. Now, this isn't really the color on my reference, but that's okay because it's down underneath everything, and I just want it to be kind of subdued. And maybe I'll even add a little bit of purple underneath here, if I can get finished with this base color. So we'll go back here and wet it again because it just started dry. And I'm just going to grab a little bit of purple, mix it in just to get something dark back there. Make it look like it's going underneath the other leaf. And I can't tell, I think it kind of goes, I'm going to just drag some of this purpley blue down so that it looks like the veins of this plant go down this way. If they didn't, they do now. This looks a little too precise, I'm just going to touch it. And then under here, they were really wild, it's sort of, it's almost like an eggplant color. It's dried up, but it's really purpley. I'm going to add a little bit of green to my purple and see if I can end up with something, a brownish purple. This is too light, but I'll get darker with it, but this is the start. Actually, I could use a little bit more bright to this, some areas. Purple and green, undersea green. But then I think I should have grabbed a little bit more of my regular purple because there's got a lot more color there than I'm looking at, I think. Doesn't matter. Or like a blue. Maybe I'll throw in a little bit of blue while it's still wet and put it in there. And let it just kind of play around. But it's hard for me to tell what's going on here because I think there's two of these. They kind of have ridges and curls. And I can't tell where they start and stop, but it doesn't matter too much. They're just going to kind of mesh together at some point. And it's just getting the right color, getting a deep muted color down in there that's sort of purplish. Now, I did a bad job around that stem, so I want to clean that up. I'll just let it kind of, it's going to be in the shadow anyway, so I'm going to grab a little bit of green and drag it down here. Let it just kind of fade in with that purple. Hide my mistakes. And then, of course, this is in shadow here too, so I'll just grab like a little bit of burnt sienna kind of color, maybe a little bit of purple. I really do just sort of grab things off my palette. I don't get too fussy with the exact same, the perfect color. And then to make it look like they belong together, I better come up here. Okay, I'm going to put some of the, in real life, there's much more green to this, but I want to put some of those, I'm going to use my nice little skinny, long round brush and put some of the veins on the underside, so they're not really, they're sort of green, but there's almost like a rusty color to them too. So I'm going to grab a little bit of both on my brush. And I can wet it after I get it down and kind of soften it. Some, I think I need a little more gold to it. Just nice to show the direction of these veins. Now I'm going to take just water right here, a couple spots. I'm going to take some of the green. I'll get a different brush. And I'm going to take a little bit of this green. It looks like kind of a rich green gold, and then a little bit of yellow. And just let it run along the bottom side of this. And sort of soften some of this. And there's some kind of crazy shadows going on here, but I can't make sense of them, and I don't think they're going to add anything to the painting, so I'm going to leave them out. And just sort of go over this again to kind of meld it together a little bit. And then the top side of that is really cool. It's, I mean, this blue, I don't even know where it's coming from. It's kind of crazy. I'm going to put that on there like that because I think it's interesting to have those colors together near each other. That's not blue enough. And then this particular leaf is just really blue. Oh my gosh, it's unbelievable. I'm almost going to go with, I think I'm going to go with this phthalo and then maybe tone it down a bit because that will be very bright, but it is bright. I just need to dull it with, I guess a little purple, see what happens. And that's going to make it more vibrant. I guess I better go over to my Ruster orange. And now, see what happens. Now, it might make sense for me to like paint in the direction, at least part of the time in the direction that this is growing, like the way it's bending, and leave a few gaps that might make it feel like it's shaping right. We'll see. This is all blue though, blue, blue, blue. And then I'm gonna have to get really dark. So. Now this definitely is going to need work later because I'm not able to get enough shape in it right now. I'm trying to cover this first layer and get it to look like one leaf. And I'll go ahead and deepen it. There's another color I really love, which I haven't used tonight, but I'll put a little bit in here, which is Indanthrone Blue. Do you guys like that color? Did anybody use it? It's like a really deep indigo. And it's super, it got a lot of power to it. And I've gotten kind of hooked on it. Especially like if you're trying to put in a nice dark background, it gets you there faster because it's so rich. And yet it's nice and transparent.
Could you say the name of that color again, please?
Indanthrone.
Oh, Indanthrone, yes.
Yeah. I mean, different brands spell it differently, but the Daniel Smith versions looks like Indanthrone. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. Indanthrone? Well, I've seen it done with an A, but this is with an O, so maybe I'm pronouncing it wrong, but let's see here. So this is a little strange in here, and probably just need to come back when it gets a little drier and go over it with another glaze, and that's okay. And then I probably want to pull some of the color out of here. I could do a little bit now, but I'll probably come back in with when it dries and pull an edge out here and an edge out on this side. That does not sound Scottish. But, you know, what do I know? Think of bagpipes.
Sometimes they do square dancing.
Ah. Okay, I'm gonna, probably it needs a few more layers, but where this is, what's kind of fun is once you get a first layer down, and then put a few more layers down, which I'll do later, but I just want to show you, I would just take a damp brush then and just like drag out some of it and do this, and it starts to shape it, and then you get some of the colors from underneath. But I don't really have it dark enough to do that very well, but that's probably what I'll do with this eggplant-y kind of color that I was working on. Get it a little bit deeper and then pull some of it out. Now, I have no clue what time it is, so somebody tell me when I need to.
10 minutes.
10 minutes. Okay, thank you. I wish I could say I was going to finish this, but I think that was. I mean, I'm used to doing demos of like pieces of things, but it's hard to do a whole painting when you work in layers. Now I'm just trying to get some other background things in that kind of can disappear. But I have that purple down, and I'll just put some greens down in here. And I don't care if they mix a little bit. Maybe add some touches of like rusty color and things like that. That could be more natural colors. Sure. When I finish it, I will. Yeah. Good point.
I think her and the members should be very happy.
Yeah, I know. It's always it's disappointing when you see a demo and you don't get to see how it ends up. But hopefully you have a clue the direction it's going. I'll do this leaf here, which is again more of an olive. I'll go back to my undersea green as my main thing, and then I'm just kind of mixing in other messes I have on my palette. I want it to be a little bit more rich green gold. And I just love the way the bluish greens play with the yellow olivey greens. There's something about it I really like. The top side of this is like a leaf curled over, and again, it's bluish. And this gets really blue on this leaf too. I just put the base down, but I didn't adjust it. So I'm gonna, at some point, I will make this have enough of the blue that they seem like the same leaf kind of coming up and around, or that they could be. I don't even know if they are. Okay, so let's see. top of this is blue. It's slightly different kind of blue. I'll just grab something a little bit, not quite the same. Let's see. Okay, like if I was farther along, I would finish everything here, and then I would start going back in with more layering, like the inside of this, it would look like it's farther in. And, you know, that's just water that I can just move down and make it look like it's got a little more shape to it. A little darker down in here. I might even put a little bit more solid undersea green right down in here and let it kind of move up a little on its own and along this edge. And over in this section, a little bit maybe sap green with undersea. I'm just guessing. And I would do, I probably got too much water on my brush. I would come over and leave some openings, but I can see there's like a little bit darker area here, so I'm gonna come in with that right over the top, leaving maybe a few openings so that you can see a little bit of the color underneath. And then it gets quite dark under here. So again, I'm going to reach back and get kind of my darker version of, not my thinned out version of the undersea green here. And maybe it gets a little rusty there, so I might just touch a little bit of burnt, I've got burnt scarlet, I think. I'll just touch that and just kind of add it to the green.
Do you use masking fluid much?
I use it occasionally. I don't use it much with natural things. But if I am painting a still life with a really shiny object or something, I might. I don't always. It just depends upon how much control I can have over that area. With, you know, if I don't need it, I don't do it. But okay, I don't know what's happening here. It's all kinds of plants back there, so I can really just throw in a bunch of different colors and shapes, and I think it doesn't matter too much. I'll let them just kind of mix. And maybe it's a little too much green going on, so I'll add a little bit of burnt sienna and purple just to kind of set that off a little bit. Especially because I have these purpley things going on over here, I think it makes sense.
If you kept painting, we'd keep watching all night.
I'd put you to sleep.
How long does one of these usually take you?
Well, it depends on how, like if I'm doing a machine painting, it takes me much longer. And the ligularia plant over there on the left, that's a print. It's actually like a full sheet. And that took a long time because I had to isolate each little leaf. There was so much going on. And I really was wanting to put that detail in rather than just suggest it. So that took, like, I would stop and start, so it's hard to say how many. But, you know, I would say sometimes I can do things in a day and sometimes it might take 40 hours. That's not much help. But, yeah, it really varies. I seem to, when I'm demoing for or not demoing, they paint with me too for the things we're just trying out in the class. Sometimes we can get something that looks close to a painting done in 3 hours. That would probably be pretty fast. Like the, if anybody saw over there, there's a goose in the water. That was just a demo, that was just a class period that we did that in, yeah.
You are pretty much where we wrap it up for the evening.
Okay.
Sure, you can keep going.
I could keep going, and I'm sorry that I can't get farther, but I promise that I will share this with Carol, and I'm sure she'll share it with you. She seems very good about sharing things.
Everybody works at their own pace, and honestly, most of the artists we have demo don't finish the painting in less than 2 hours, so.
Good. No, I don't feel so bad.
Before people leave, Paulette Krakowski has given me some forms here for a plein air event this Saturday at the Birchfield Nature and Art Center. That's reopened on Union Road in West Seneca. And it takes place this Saturday from 9 till noon. And, well, no wait, 9:30. 9:30. It's drop off of your finished piece is 9 till noon. It's spot coffee at Union Road in West Seneca. Anything more?
Well, it's just something new for the town of West Seneca. I used to work years ago at the Virtual Nature and Art Center. I was the art director there for 5 years. But the Chamber of Commerce is doing this event this year called Birch Fest. So my job is to look for plein air painters that would like to be on the grounds of what Birchfield painted, which is 9 acres on the one side of Buffalo Creek. Then you can also, there's a young couple that bought the Birchfield home where the studio is, and they are gonna also want people on that property to paint, if anybody wants to do that. And their hours are gonna be from 11 to 3, because there's a family that actually lives in his home right now, and the studio behind is now Airbnb. So, but it's been renovated and stuff. And Alex and Brittany are their names, and so they'll be on the property. They'll also be one of the companies that did and helped Birchfield with his wallpaper. That was so famous. So they're going to be on the property by the time also. And there's going to be things throughout the town. We have even a brewery that's going to have the Birch Fest beer. And I guess one of the grandchildren okayed a design that's supposed to be on the outside of the can for the day. So there's different things going on. And so for the artists, if you plein air paint that day, I'm going to have a table there for you to like check in on the Nature Center and check in with me. And I'll have these forms there also, but I just wanted to bring these in case I didn't even know if there was plein air painters here in this group. I just wanted to let people know about it. I know some other people that are from other plein air groups that it got passed along. And a week later, I would be meeting you at Spot Coffee. And if you work in the area of a really nice frame, and you don't know that you need some extraordinary framing done, a week later, it's going to be hung up in an art show at Spot Coffee for a month. Free, no charge. You're welcome to do it, to join us, you know, or sketch. You know, some people may want to be doing sketches that they like running in frame. But all the information's on there, and my phone number's on there if you're interested. You just wanted to pass it on. Thanks, Deb.
Stand up, would you just pick up a chair and stack it along the side?
Your 10 minutes is out.
Thank you.